Good morning, everybody. My name is Sandra Cook. I'm TSSA's Compliance Manager, and I'll be presenting the webinar today, along with Danielle Fernandez, our Policy Advisor, and Mike Sanford, Fuels Regional Manager for Eastern and Northern Ontario. So TSSA, I'm going to be presenting the Liquid Fuels Compliance Standard. If you could go to the next slide, Danielle. So the purpose of this webinar is to share the development, what a compliance standard is, and the implementation timetable for the liquid fuels compliance standard for liquid fuels facilities. So what is a compliance standard? Compliance standards are evidence-based and data-driven approach to identify which areas correlate most to risk. It is specifically a tool for a periodic inspection. And what it is, it identifies and provides a list of high-risk non-compliances. If found on a periodic inspection, TSSA will follow up to confirm compliance. So once again, it identifies high-risk non-compliances that if we find them on a periodic inspection, TSSA will follow up to confirm compliance. As you know, on all TSSA inspection reports, there always is a time to comply. And all of these high-risk non-compliances do have a specific time to comply. So if we return and you haven't made the correction within that time period, there will be further enforcement up to and including shutdown. It also supports industry with understanding safety priorities that may pose a high risk if not immediately addressed. Although this is a periodic inspection tool for TSSA, it's also a tool for you. So regardless of whether there's an upcoming periodic inspection, if one of these non-compliances does appear at your site, you should action it and correct it immediately. It helps owners, contractors, mechanics, and inspectors, and specifically inspectors, focus on high-risk non-compliances. TSSA, like many other regulators, is often criticized for being in the minutia or looking at things that are more administrative or low risk. So we're really trying to focus our inspectors on high-risk non-compliances, and this standard allows us to do that. We're also hoping and driving for improved inspection consistency. Again, TSSA as a regulator, like most regulators, is criticized that inspections are not the same across the province. When we implement this compliance standard into our system, it's going to be implemented using a checklist for the inspectors. So the inspectors will have an actual checklist that they have to go through. And all of the items that are on this compliance standard are on the checklist, as well as some others that we feel are required for a healthy, full inspection. So what we want to strive to is that an inspection in the north looks the same as an inspection in Windsor, inspection in Toronto, or inspection in Ottawa. It also acknowledges that regulated parties have the primary responsibility for compliance, and they can resolve lower medium risk non-compliances, which we refer to as safety tasks, without further TSSA inspection. So if we're on a periodic inspection and we don't discover any high risk non-compliances, and we only discover lower medium risk non-compliances, TSSA is not going to return to follow up. The expectation is that you will correct those non-compliances with the time to comply that's on the inspection report. Compliance standards are available on our website. The liquid fuels compliance standard is available on our website today. And the other thing that we're implementing with the compliance standard, and we're going to be implementing this compliance standard on April 14th, is a notification letter or a notification email rather, that your periodic inspection is coming up. So 30 days before your periodic inspection, we're going to be sending out an email to you saying, hey, your periodic inspection is coming up. With that notification, there's going to be a link to the compliance standard, so you can go through and make sure that all of those things are dealt with before the TSSA inspection to get the cleanest inspection you can. Compliance standards are also dynamic and will be reassessed on an ongoing basis. Typically, that coincides with the code cycle. As many of you know, the Liquid Fuels Handling Code, the last time it was published was in 2017. Just as an update, we are currently revising that code. We have an internal working group. We're going to form an industry working group and then go out for a full wholesome consultation. And we expect the Liquid Fuels Handling Code to be revised and published within the next 12 months. So how are compliance standards developed, right? So we have what we call a list of standard orders, which are associated with non-compliance. And for liquid fuels, we had about 110 of them. So we risk assess each and every one of those orders. And the risk assessment somewhat looks like this. There's a requirement for overfill protection at a facility, right, on a tank. So what happens, what's the possibility of that failing or not working or not being there? So the first thing is that, you have your initiating task, which is the overfill protection malfunctions. What's the probability of that? What is the intermediate thing that would need to happen to cause an event? Well, you would need to overfill that tank, right? And what's the probability of that? And then what you have is a consequence, and obviously the consequence would be a spill. So we have an algorithm, and you put all the likelihoods and probabilities into that, and you end up with a finite score for that non-compliance or for that order. So we went ahead and we risk assessed all of the orders, which were about 110 of them. And then what we do is what we call an inflection point analysis. So you look at the score for that order and the volume to which it is issued in the last 10 years. And you plot that on a graph. And what you get is an asymptotic type graph, which flattens out at the top. And where the inflection point, where it flattens out, all of the orders that are underneath that represent the greatest amount of risk associated with a liquid fuels facility. And the orders that fell beneath that inflection point accounted for about 90% of the risk. Then we end up with a draft compliance standard, and we take it to our executive team for approval. We don't go through all of the orders with them, but we go through the methodology and basically what the final result looks like. And then we formed an industry working group, and we met with them last November, December time period, and went through the compliance standard with them. And some of their feedback was, some of the times to comply for some of the orders they thought needed to be increased or decreased, and some of the wording in the orders, and we made those changes. So that was then we would revise the compliance standard based on that feedback, and then it's finalized. And here we are today during the implementation phase, and we're going to be implementing this particular compliance standard on April 14th. And what we do with all compliance standards is we hold a webinar. In this webinar, we have invited all facility operators and license holders and all petroleum contractors. So again, thank you very much for attending today. Provides us an opportunity to provide you with this information. And then, of course, we do internal training with our inspectors prior to launch, which we have already done. So let's get to the meat of the matter. What are the orders that are on the compliance standard? So I'm going to go through them one by one. The first one is comply with clause 7.3.1 of the Liquid Fuels Handling Code and ensure precision leak testing is completed every 2 years and provide a copy of the most recent current report. So this is where the notification comes out that please, when you get a notification of the upcoming periodic, a number of these orders require a report or documentation. It doesn't matter whether it's paper or electronic, but it's always best if you can have it there for the inspector. So the first order that's on the compliance standard is for the precision leak testing. That has to be done every 2 years, and please have a copy of the report available in some form for the inspector. The next order is comply with clause 6.5.2 of the Liquid Fuels Handling Code and ensure all employees are trained in the use of emergency procedures as required in clause 6.7 of the code and provide records confirming such training. So this is a requirement for your employees to be trained in emergency procedures. And again, please have the record of training available, either in electronic or in paper form. The next requirement or the next order that's on the compliance standard is near and dear to TSSA's heart. Comply with section 10.1 of the liquid fuels regulation and ensure the facility is licensed to operate. As you know, TSSA has taken a very strong position on licensing. We introduced a lapsed authorization program 2 or 3 years back, where if you let your license lapse for more than 60 days, we reach out to you. If it's not renewed, we then dispatch an inspector. So hopefully on a periodic inspection, you will never see a lapsed or expired license, but it is one of the orders on the compliance standard. The next one is comply with clause 5.2.5 of the Liquid Fuels Handling Code and ensure that all images on the display monitor are of sufficient size and clarity to allow the attendant to read a vehicle license plate held by a person in the fueling area. So if I'm standing in the fueling area holding a license plate, the person, the attendant inside the kiosk should be able to see, be able to read that license plate clearly that I'm holding. The next one is comply with clause 6.3.1 of the Liquid Fuels Handling Code and ensure product is not dispensed or vented at the facility within 3 meters of any source of ignition. So again, you can't have product being dispensed or vented within 3 meters of any source of ignition. The next order is comply with clause 1.2.3 of the Liquid Fuel Handling Code and provide copies of the inventory control, likely the DIP book. So again, we get your pre-notification letter that, hey, that you have an upcoming periodic. Please try to have these records available for the inspector so we don't have to follow up. The next one is comply with clause 1.3.1 of the Liquid Fuels Handling Code and ensure that any equipment installed at the facility is approved and installed in accordance with the manufacturer's certified instructions and this code. So this is a tenement of all fuels regulations and all fuels codes, that equipment needs to be approved and needs to be installed in accordance with manufacturer's instructions and additionally the Liquid Fuels Handling Code. The next order is comply with clause 4.6.9 of the Liquid Fuels Handling Code and provide a written record of the maintenance and annual testing of the shear valves and leak detection systems. So again, we're going to be looking for those test records for the shear valves and the leak detection system when we're doing our periodic inspection. Next one is comply with clause 4.5.2.7 of the Liquid Fuels Handling Code and ensure the under dispenser sump is leak tight and equipped with a liquid sensor that complies with this clause. So your under dispenser sumps need to be leak tight, and then the liquid sensor needs to be operational. The next one is comply with clause 7.3.5a of the Liquid Fuels Handling Code, where a loss of liquid or glazing of water is not attributable to condensation is indicated by any of the leak detection measures described in clause 7. The authorization holder shall investigate and take corrective action to prevent further intrusion of water. So anytime any of your leak detection systems are indicating there's a problem, you need to take action and investigate and find out what's going on. The next order is comply with clause 1.3.2 of the Liquid Fuels Handling Code and ensure all stage 1 vapor recovery equipment is installed, operated, and maintained according with the requirements of Ontario Regulation 455/94 of the Environmental Protection Act. So where stage 1 vapor recovery equipment is required, which is in the Golden Horseshoe, it has to be there, it has to be maintained, and it has to be operational. The next one is comply with clause 4.6.13 of the Liquid Fuels Handling Code and ensure an emergency breakaway device is installed on each dispenser hose. So you need to have your breakaway devices on each dispenser hose. Comply with clause 4.6.10 of the Liquid Fuels Handling Code and ensure that the identified sump sensor is repaired so that when a leak is detected, an audible or visible alarm is activated and product flow is shut off. And when the leak detection device is turned off or bypassed, the product flow is shut off. So your sensors have to be working, and obviously the system cannot be bypassed. And if it's not working, the product flow needs to be shut off, or if it's bypassed or turned off, the product flow has to be shut off. Comply with clause 2.3.1.2 of the Liquid Fuels Handling Code and ensure corrosion protection for underground storage tank systems, which includes both the underground tank and the piping, is completed every 2 years in accordance with this clause and provide a copy of the most current report. So you need to have your corrosion protection up to date, and you need to be able to demonstrate that with a copy of the most recent and current report. Comply with clause 2.3.1.4 of the Liquid Fuels Handling Code and conduct a leak test in accordance with Section 7 of the Liquid Fuels Handling Code, and that's for your underground piping when that cathodic protection test has failed for the underground piping. So if you have a failure of the piping, of the corrosion protection test, you need to leak test the piping. And this one's very important, comply with Section 22.4 of the Liquid Fuels Regulation and apply for a facility modification or receive written permission from the director to operate. So if you modify your facility, you expand it, you reduce it, you would add dispensers, tanks, what have you, you need to apply for a modification and you need to get written permission from the director to operate. And the last one that's on the compliance standards comply with clause C.1.1 of the Liquid Fuels Handling Code and ensure the manual leak detection system complies with the requirements of this clause. So if you have manual leak detection, you have to make sure it complies with clause C.1.1. So there are 17 standard orders that are on the compliance standard, and these are the 17 that I've just recently gone over with you. So you can go to the next slide, Danielle. So today we're conducting the webinar. There's going to be some further industry communication, both to the operators and license holders and petroleum contractors. And we're going to be implementing this compliance standard on April 14th. So in about 2.5, 3 weeks. So I'd open up the floor at this point for any questions that anybody may have. And Danielle's going to be handling the Q&A box and letting us know if there are questions. And Mike, Mike has done many liquid fuels facility inspections, and so has his team. So Mike will be able to answer any questions along with me.
Thanks, Sandra. The first question is, other than the liquid propane and liquid fuels compliance standards presented this week, are you aware of any other TSSA branch with similar compliance standards as part of their periodic inspection process? More specifically, TSSA Operating Engineers Branch.
So the operating, well, I'll answer that in twofold. So yes, there are other compliance standards. We have four for ski lifts, for different types of ski lifts. We have one for passenger elevators. We have one for escalators. We also have one for heating fuels contractors as well. That's an audit program. For the OE compliance standard, that's very timely. Right now, we are under development. We started that about 6 weeks ago. So we're working through the standard orders right now and about to start doing risk assessments. And so we have to develop that particular compliance standard this fiscal year, which is by May 1st next year, we have to have it developed, and we'll be launching it after May 1st, 2026. Danielle, I don't know if you want to add anything to that.
No, I think you covered it. If there is a follow-up question to that, we just ask that you kindly put it in the Q&A box. The next question on our list here is, will the code clauses or reg clauses be added to each compliance standard when they are posted on the TSSA website as requested during the propane compliance standard webinar on Tuesday?
I have to go back to our communications team. I think, as I said on Tuesday, I think that makes good sense. So I'm going to say the answer is yes right now. I can't see anybody saying going against it. We put it on that, and I guess it was me just to make it more layman type thing. But I think the comment is very valid, and we'll take it back and we'll add the reg numbers and clause numbers.
Thank you, Sandra. The next question is, how does TSSA manage discrepancies between inspectors where some individuals interpret the code differently per region? Examples include size and location of approved portable containers, no smoking signage, camera view per fueling position.
So I'm going to let Mike handle that one. Mike, if you don't mind.
Well, the code does state the certain sizes, but you're right. It is a lot of interpretation. But if you do run into that, please contact the local inspector that did the inspection, and then further to that, you can also contact the local supervisor, and then we can look into it and discuss it and try to come to a stand.
The other thing that I brought up at the beginning of the webinar is that we are reviewing the liquid fuels handling code right now, and there's going to be an opportunity to tighten some of these clauses up to avoid individual interpretation. So we will be forming a working group. We haven't finished doing the internal review yet, but I think we're getting pretty close. And then it will be out for broader consultation as well. Danielle, I know you're leading that project. If you want to say more about it, both Mike and I are participating in it.
No, I think you've covered it. We will be reaching out in the next couple of weeks to strike an external internal working group on this. So keep an eye out. The next question on our list here is, my company basically keeps TSSA fuel certification for tender purposes, and when we receive projects, we use a certified contractor. The contractor then follows the compliance standards. As a business, do I need to verify the subcontractor's compliance?
So you have a petroleum contractor license, I take it, right? But you sub all of the work out. So I mean, it's good business to check their compliance. I mean, at the end of the day, if we go out and we find things are wrong at the build, we're going to be issuing orders to have that rectified. But it's always good business to make sure your subs are doing things properly. Mike, I don't know if you want to add to that.
You're being a general contractor, you should always know what's going on with your subcontractors. Again, they are the registered contractor with the petroleum, so hopefully they know what the compliance standards are and do the install as per the code.
And one thing I just want to mention again, this compliance standard is for periodic inspections, right? When you do a build, right, you have to be compliant with all aspects of the code and the regulation, right? And when TSSA does an initial inspection, we'll be looking for everything. We won't just be looking at the things that I've gone through on this particular webinar. This webinar is for periodic inspections. When you do an initial build, everything needs to be compliant, and TSSA should be, checking that thoroughly. Mike, I don't know if you want to add a little bit more as well, but.
No, that's, as you say, this is strictly for periodic inspections, for a modification or a new facility. This checklist they can utilize, but it's not part of the inspection. And with the mod and a new facility, if there are any non-compliances, the site will not be licensed until it's been cleaned up.
Thank you both. The next question is, in respect to section 731, does inclusion in SIR move the 2-year precision testing to 5 years as per table 3, page 88 of the current liquid fuels handling code?
Yes, Mike, I mean, you're more familiar with that table.
That is, yes, if you have if you have the SIR program and the documentation is on site, then it automatically moves the testing to 5 years as per the code.
Thank you, Mike. If there are any follow-up questions, we ask that you please put them in the Q&A box so that I can have our experts here respond to them. The next question is, does TSSA have an updated list of liquid fuels inspectors and team leaders for each region?
Without a doubt, we have an up-to-date list, like our regional supervisors, and we know who is assigned to the liquid fuels inspections. Mike, I mean, this is your ball game, but for sure we have a list of our regional supervisors, and we know who's assigned liquid fuels inspections.
Yeah, and I would suggest is we'll give a list of the supervisors because inspectors do move kind of from area to area. So sometimes you may have 2 or 3 inspectors doing one area. So probably the best thing would be a list of the supervisors, and then they can advise from there.
Thank you. The next question, is there anything in this compliance standard that should be communicated to consumers directly, or does it concern those who handle liquid fuels as part of their occupation, or inspectors who ensure safe handling compliance? Most consumers are not clear on the role of the TSSA.
Well, this compliance standard is really meant for our inspectors and for facility operators. So it's not really meant to be distributed to consumers. And it really, I don't think the orders that are on the compliance standard would have much relevance to an actual consumer or the actual public. So this is directly for our inspectors and for facility operators and for petroleum contractors to be aware of what the high risk non-compliances are.
Thank you, Sandra. The next question is the compliance standard process classified as a director's order or need director's approval? Understood that these orders are all pre-existing. However, this is a process change by TSSA that could be questioned.
Without a doubt, the director has final approval. I mean, because they are the statutory director, they do have final approval. It does not require a director's order, right? We have had our orders risk assessed in liquid fuels and in propane for some time, right? This is a reassessment, and using a tweaked risk assessment. And I mean, obviously we have more data that we have as well, like how many times these orders have been issued, have they been associated with incidents, and then the inflection point analysis. So it does not require a director's order, but certainly the director has to approve the compliance standard before we can implement it, which is an internal process.
Thank you, Sandra. The next question is, will you be capturing and posting / sharing the Q&A and this presentation?
Yes, so this presentation, and including the Q&A, will be posted on our website approximately a week after. So about a week from now, you should see this posted on our website, including the slides and the whole thing.
Thank you. Also, I'll add that the Q&A is part of the recording, so you will have access to the questions that are being shared right now. The next question: Are there any other items specific to marina gas dock operations?
There's no specific orders on the compliance standard that are just for marinas. I can tell you in our checklist for the inspectors, it does include specific questions on marinas because we want to have like a consistent inspection, but there's no specific questions about marinas on this compliance standard.
Thank you, Sandra. Do the periodic inspections apply to private outlets or retail outlets only?
Retail outlets only. Currently, right now, TSSA does not license private fuel outlets, so we don't know where they are. We do regulate them, like they do need to comply with the code and the regulation, but there's no requirement for a TSSA license. That is being investigated at this particular time under a different project, and they may become licensed in the future, but currently they're not licensed, so this compliance standard does not apply to them because we don't periodically inspect them.
Thank you, Sandra. When you get your notice of periodic inspection, will you get a reminder of the documents you should have available?
No, what you're going to get, excuse me, is a link to the compliance standard and to the person's point of putting the actual code clauses and regulation clauses on it will be helpful. But you will get a link to the compliance standard saying, hey, please ensure your facility is up to date and make sure these things are compliant.
Thank you. The next question is a little bit long, so just bear with me, and perhaps this is directed to Mike. We are a fuel supplier, and we have a competitor fuel supplier who has no regard for compliance. We often lose business to them as we will not install tanks in locations that are not compliant. We often report these incidents to TSSA, and I'm sure they follow up and take action. However, it doesn't seem to stop the competitor from continuing to act in that manner. Is there a standard in which TSSA increases enforcement action? Obviously, some enforcement actions are not significant enough to curb some action.
So yes, if it's been reported as a complaint, we will look into it. And obviously, if it continues and with the same person over and over again, the enforcement will get more severe as we go along. But yes, all I can say is please keep reporting it and we will investigate it. And then, as I say, the enforcement will get more severe, the more cases that this same person is involved with.
Thank you, Mike. The next question is, does the TSSA permit fuel system owners in commercial office buildings multi-year variances to permit code compliance if the costs associated with the compliance are excessive and would create a hardship for the owner? The question assumes that there are no critical deficiencies that place the public at risk and that quarterly inspections by an OBT1 are carried out.
So basically what you're saying is that, you have an installation that's not compliant within a commercial building. You can apply for a variance. Variances can be either temporary or permanent. So you would apply for a variance, you would give your equivalent safety. In this case, it sounds like you do quarterly inspections. That's reviewed by the variance committee. If it's found acceptable, then great, a variance will be issued. If TSSA deems that other measures are required, they'll get back to you. So there are ways to legally operate something that's non-compliant. You'd have to do that through the variance process.
Thank you, Sandra. Currently, the final question in our queue is, how long do businesses have to come into compliance?
So I'll answer that in twofold, right? So when we do I'll talk about periodic inspection, then just any type of regular inspection. So the items that are on this compliance standard typically will have a 14-day to comply time, right? In some situations, we recognize that may not be feasible. For example, if we get there and your precision leak test is not done, there's only 4 or 5 companies in the province that do that type of testing. We've upped the standard time to comply for that to 90 days. So there's a few orders on the compliance standard which give more than 14 days. The majority of them are a 14-day time to comply, right? Another for safety tasks, typically like things that are low and medium risk non-compliance, we typically give 90 days to comply. And typically, our general rule at TSSA is, we generally give 90-day time period for compliance as a max. Most of the fuels regulations, when a contractor or a technician or mechanic find an unacceptable condition, the max time they can give is 90 days. So typically that's what our inspector gives, is 90 days. That being said, right, if you're working with us, we will work with you, right? I mean, everybody has to be reasonable. And so, but those are typically our times to comply. Mike, I don't know if you want to add to that.
No, that's correct. As you say, Sandra, if you're willing to work with us, we will work with you. Get a hold of whichever inspector did the inspection. And as I say, just work with them. We do have the ability to extend the time as long as you provide us with some kind of a response that you are working on the situation and trying to rectify the non-compliance.
Thank you. Thank you both. The next question is, how does the TSSA manage liquid fuels handling code non-compliances on native retail gas bars? And in brackets, it says unmanned after hours retail gas bars.
So the way we look at native lands, if somebody wants to have a TSSA license, then you have to comply with all of our requirements. On native lands, TSSA does not have jurisdiction. So we can't enforce things, where we do not have jurisdiction. So we don't have jurisdiction on native lands, federal lands, right? What we have said to federal sites or native land sites where they do want to be engaged with TSSA, either you're all in or you're all out, right? So, but typically we don't have jurisdiction, and so we don't actually have authority on those sites.
That was currently the last question in the queue. If there are any other questions, we encourage you to put them in the Q&A box. And Sandra and Mike would be happy to address them if there are any.
So Danielle, maybe we'll give it another minute, and if there are any other questions, that's great.
There's another question. Will you be posting copies of the various compliance standards?
Yeah, all of the compliance standards are posted on our website, whether they're for elevators, ski lifts, escalators, liquid fuels, propane, et cetera. And we'll update the posting for liquid fuels and propane to include the clause and the reg references. But yeah, they're all posted on our website.
The next question is, sorry, a few that have come in now. How do I participate in the liquid fuels, in the working group for liquid fuels, the liquid fuels handling code? Do you want to take that one?
I don't know if you want to answer that or if you want me to answer, Danielle.
No, you go ahead. You go ahead.
Okay. So we manage our engagement with stakeholders through our stakeholder relations group. And so they're going to be reaching out to industry members to participate. We have to balance between having too many and not having enough. So if you do want to participate, you can certainly send me an email, but we have to have it balanced as well. And that's really managed by our stakeholder relations group. Danielle, I don't know if you want to add to that.
I'll add only to say that it is very matrix driven. So we need to ensure that we have a good subsection of industry to cover the various issues that we're tackling in the liquid fuels handling code. If you are not invited to be part of the original or not able to participate in the technical working group, rest assured that there will be opportunities for you to provide broader feedback on the entire draft code after the technical working group has had an opportunity. So the technical working group isn't the only opportunity. There are other opportunities as we move along in the development of the draft code. I'm going to ask the next question. Sorry, there are a few that just came in. When partnering with a property owner, the permit will be issued to the owner only, or partner can apply too?
I don't quite understand the question, right? Can you repeat it, Danielle?
Yeah, when partnering with a property owner, the permit will be issued to the owner only, or the partner can apply too. Perhaps we can ask the person that asked this question to put a little bit more detail in the Q&A box, and then I'd be happy to raise the question again for you. I'll move to the next question in the interim, if that's okay, Sandra and Mike.
Sure.
Are there any significant changes to regulation pending?
The only thing to the fuels regulation that are being contemplated are licensing private fuel outlets and licensing liquid fuel distributors. Whether that happens or not is under discussion right now. So those are the things that are those are the two items that are being discussed. Mike, do you know of anything else? Those are the two ones I know of.
The only other thing would be the PFOs.
Yeah, licensing private fuel outlets. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you both. The next question is, does corrosion test, maybe I'll readdress this. Can corrosion tests be performed for double wall fiberglass UST as well?
No, I don't think so.
No.
Mike, I'll let you answer. No, not the.
No, corrosion testing is for steel tanks only, or steel tanks or steel lines.
The next question, owners rarely feel that they are given enough time to prepare for the TSSA do to improve communication with owners to future changes and other industry initiatives?
Daniel, you froze a bit. Can you just repeat that?
Yeah, sure. Sorry, my apologies. Can you hear me okay now?
Yep.
Owners rarely feel that they are given enough time to prepare for regulation and code changes. What can TSSA do to improve communication with owners for future changes and other industry initiatives?
Well, the thing that we can do for regulation changes and for code changes, generally there's like you publish it and then there's an implementation time. So for example, with propane, when the introduction of RSMPs, it was introduced into the regulation in 2009, and it was, I think, like a year later that it actually got implemented, right? So for example, if we end up licensing PFOs or end up licensing fuel distributors, I would assume the same thing will be given, that there will be an implementation time. The same with the code. Generally, you publish a code and then you adopt it within 90 days or whatever it happens to be, to give people opportunity to review the changes, right? And I mean, certainly, if there's significant changes in the code, we would have our communications department would reach out and let people know about that. There would be a communications plan associated with that. The same with a change to a regulation. That's significant.
Yeah, and I'll just add in terms of the code, we will be working closely with industry partners to ensure that if there are changes that are large scale, that we ensure that we give people enough time to ensure compliance with those provisions, um, with the effective date of that code. So
Yeah,
working
you
closely
see
with
in the past draft or past published Liquid Fuels Handling Code 2017, as we've been going through the code, you'll see, this change has to be done by, and they give a change, right, a date, right, right within the code. So even if we publish the code on, May 1st, 2026, if there's certain provisions in there that are a big change, there will be time given in the code to make those changes as well.
Would the potential PFO licensing discussions take into consideration storage capacity or dispensing volumes?
Right now they do. Right now, what's being contemplated is that, aggregate to a certain capacity, and I can't remember what it is. I can't remember if it's 25,000 liters or whatever it happens to be. Anything under that would not be licensed, and anything over that would be licensed. So that is being considered for sure. I'm not personally on that project, so but
It is, yeah. It is an aggregate of 25,000 liters or more.
yeah.
Are manual leak detectors even compliant? If not, why would they need to be tested yearly? Sometimes they are in place as a legacy equipment, and there would also be some sensors.
Mike, I'll let you answer that one. You're more familiar with these sites than I am.
I'm trying to figure manual leak detectors.
Like manual leak detection, I think of as dipping, things of that nature.
Yeah, dipping the tank, not so much sub sensors.
Yeah, so manual leak detection systems like dipping are still allowed, right?
Yes.
I think the person is indicating that sometimes they're just legacy and they've got some sensors in place, as well as manual leak detectors.
As per the code, as long as there are some sensors, then it's compliant with the code. So
Thank you, Mike. If there is a follow-up question, please do add it to the Q&A. Aside from general stricter enforcement by inspectors, are there any fundamental differences with the new compliance standard?
Well, I believe, and Mike, you can correct me if I'm wrong. I believe that some of the orders that we consider high risk now may not have been considered high risk before, and vice versa. Like for example, my understanding, and Mike, you can correct me if I'm wrong. Extinguishers used to be a high risk item on the compliance before we introduced this compliance standard, and extinguishers, whether they're out of test, whether they're there or not, once we leave the site, you can be non-compliant. Somebody can pick up the extinguisher, whatever, and take it away. So we looked at things like that as not being really that they really should be on a compliance standard. I don't, Mike, if you want to elaborate.
well, the same as our signage, right? Right now, they're listed as a high risk order. With the new compliance standards, they are a low risk order. And as the standard says, fire extinguishers are a high risk order at this time. They will be a low risk order with the new compliance standards. And I do believe we actually removed quite a few high-risk orders from the old to the new. So I wouldn't say that we are being stricter enforcement. I think we actually have less high-risk orders now than what we did have.
Thank you, Mike. The person that asked the previous question around leak detectors, they just wanted to clarify to say, and I'll read the question again with the clarification. The question is, are mechanical leak detectors even compliant? If not, why would they need to be tested yearly? Sometimes they are in place as a legacy equipment, and there would also be some sensors. I don't know if that helps with your response.
I'm going to leave this one to you, Mike.
Well, if it's what I'm thinking, most sites are supposed to have electronic leak line detection as per the existing code now. I do know some sites applied for a variance for a couple of years to allow time to upgrade to electronic and get rid of the mechanical leak line detectors.
Thanks, Mike. If there is a follow-up, please do add it to the Q&A. The next question, so if emergency shear valve is installed in all dispensers, still precision leak testing needs to be performed every 2 years?
If you have underground steel tanks, yes.
Yes, it does.
That's currently the last question in the Q&A. We'll just give it a minute.
Sure. Okay. I think we can wrap it up. Anyways, I want on behalf of Mike, myself, and Danielle, I want to thank everybody for attending and participating. We really appreciate it. We're really excited about introducing this compliance standard on April 14th. And have yourselves a great day. And again, thank you for participating and attending this morning.